San Francisco, the beautiful city by the bay, is overrun with drugs and homeless people. But rather than cleaning up their scat-filled sidewalks, they're cleaning up their language. The city's Board of Supervisors passed a resolution sanitizing the language of its criminal justice system so ex-cons are no longer remembered for the worst things that they've done. It's not that objectionable, that goal at least. From now on, listen to this though, a convicted felon will be referred to as a justice-involved person, and a parolee released from jail will now be called a returning resident. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, using the new terminology, someone whose car has been broken into could well be a person who has come in contact with a returning resident who is involved with the justice system and who is currently under supervision with a history of substance abuse. Whew, which is a fancy way of saying a crackhead stole my Prius. So will inventing a pretend language help, or should San Francisco find a better way to deal with its crime wave and homeless people problem? Or instead, just like maybe they'd call homeless people free-range people. I don't know what they're going to do next. The panel returning with me now, it's Beverly, it's Dave, it's Juan. Hi, guys. All right, Juan. In this resolution from the people who are running the city of San Francisco, they said that this is their fight back, their pushback against normalizing institutional racism and supremacy. I feel like ex-con, whatever, these terms apply to anyone of any race. I don't know why this has to be a racial thing.
Well, wait a second. I mean, you and I both know disproportionate share of the prison population are minorities. And so, I mean, race gets caught up in the high levels of incarceration of minorities in the country, and people have all sorts of bizarre and sometimes, I think, flighty arguments about it, but I don't think there's any question that race comes into it. I will say this. You're trying to change attitudes. I think that's what the supervisors are doing. I don't think it has anything to do with all the problems of San Francisco in terms of people defecating on the street and the like.
It just seems like a priority issue here, right?
Well, no, I think it's a cultural issue. And by the way, guess who supports this? Donald Trump. Donald Trump and the Republicans passed criminal justice reform.
Yeah, but
that's
policy. That's policy, not
and
language.
This is, well, no, part of it is we have such high levels of recidivism in this country. Let's make an effort to say to people, hey, you know what? If you're a convict, or what now? What are the people in San Francisco going to call them? Someone who's been
better learn it, Juan.
A formerly incarcerated person.
Or in touch with the criminal justice system, so that employers would look at that person a little differently and not immediately exclude them from the applicant pool.
Everyone's going to learn the new code words and know exactly what it means. And it just seems, that's my point, is priorities. When you've got poop all over the streets, literally, in that city, maybe saying, like, let's pass a thing about these words that we use. It just seems kind of like misplaced attention.
And are we going to be fined if we don't use the right term? It's hard for us to even figure out what are we supposed to call this term now. I grew up in the Bay Area. I love the city of San Francisco. It does have a lot of issues. I don't, as a whole, same with Juan, I don't have a problem with trying to change the stigma, but you don't do that by changing the language. You don't do that by changing the terminology. You do that by getting people back to work and helping them become productive members of society again. So do you think criminal justice reform as a policy is something that does work? But I think just changing speech does nothing, and actually think aggravates people even more.
Dave, I think my favorite one is returning resident. I feel like that's what some high-end like rehab place would call Lindsay Lohan when she's back for like punching her ticket number 7 or whatever. Oh, it's our returning resident is back.
Right.
Some of this is deeply silly, right?
Yeah, but it is kind of a microcosm for everything that seems to be wrong with the hard left, and it's this obsession with rhetoric and terminology as if that's more important than actions and actually solving problems. I mean, even as you alluded to the First Step Act before, this gets Donald Trump no credit with the mainstream left in this country. I mean, he's still a fascist to them. It doesn't matter because they don't like the way he talks. It doesn't matter that like actual lives have been saved, but that probably people who didn't need to be in jail, maybe some who did, but a lot who didn't.
Like
have
these are
been released.
outcomes.
Right, like
outcomes.
this is real human beings' lives that are actually affected. And just anyone who's been to San Francisco recently, I mean, to see the problems that they have there and their concern, like you said, their priority is what we're calling an ex-convict, a justice-involved person. This is pretty silly.
Well, let's pivot